Hi, everyone. In this episode you're about to listen to, we talked to Amy Bridges from CPA.com. I think you'll be really interested. This is a little bit of a different kind of format that we have done, but we'll get into some things where she specifically talks about CPA.com and what resources are available. In general, how people might want to look at practice development and some exciting things that are going on. And then also she'll talk about a benchmark survey that CPA.com does every year, and how people can get that and what information that shares in there. So I will just stop now and let you guys jump in and listen to this episode. I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Modern CPA Success Show. I'm Tom Waddleton. I'm one of the virtual CFOs at Summit Virtual CFO by Anders. My co-host as usual is Adam Hale, who helps run our practice. Adam, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
And we're excited to have a guest, Amy Bridges, Senior Manager of CAS Professional Service at CPA.com. It's a subsidiary of AICPA. Been in this role for around 3 years and with CPA.com for about 6. Is that right?
About 6, and the role has just evolved. I mean, it really hasn't, I came on board to start doing education, and here we are.
Great. I would love to hear a little more about that, Amy, kind of your career journey and help people understand who you are.
Sure. So I always start by laughing and saying, I am the product of an aeronautical engineer and a music teacher. So all that right brain kind of stuff combined with, I think a little bit of curiosity and how do we approach patterns and how do we approach the world? So my undergraduate degree was in mathematics. And I actually started working with a software company right out of college, went back and taught for a while. So I taught everything from 4th grade to college, lots of different math at lots of different levels, and then kind of stepped into this adult education role with a number of different really small software companies. I actually worked for the Department of Education in Indiana with a group of 6 people who did data collection for a long time, but lots of support, lots of training, lots of thinking about how we can make things more efficient. So at some point, the role that I was in as a director with another software company kind of came to a logical end. And this opportunity with CPA.com came up. They were doing a workshop. We have the digital CPA conference that had been going at that time for just a few years. And we're looking to formalize the way that we do some of our educational offerings and really kind of put that in a place where we could do more to help more firms in more ways. So Tom, as you said, I started at CPA.com thinking that my role was going to be across the entire accounting profession. One of the very first projects that I worked on was a self-study for A&A. From there, I moved over and did a tax workshop, followed by another tax workshop, and then really landed in this client advisory services space because CPA.com has done so much to sort of be out in front of client advisory services, defining the space, really trying to put some rails around how firms can move into a CAS space, how practitioners who are interested in client advisory and accounting services can get started in this space. And so at this point, we do lots of workshops. We do, we're actually rolling out next week some self-studies. We're rolling out, we've been in the coaching and consulting space for over a year now. And we have a lot going on. And of course, Adam, there's always that CAS benchmark survey.
Yes, we will definitely get into the CAS benchmark survey for sure. And I don't want to delegitimize you at all, Amy, but what you forgot to mention is that you're a Purdue grad, which, with Tom there, you're a math nerd, so I'll let that one slide. We know, IU is, where the really talented folks go, but that's okay. Purdue occasionally steals a couple of you. But no, it's that is quite the journey. And, in terms of from the education standpoint, and I think that's what's most interesting about CPA.com. And I think we've talked over the years. One of the things that whenever people come to us and they're like, hey, what are resources for the CAS space in general? Because frankly, they just don't exist. You know, unlike tax, unlike audit, everything's not black and white. So it's really hard to really lock anything formal down anyway. And then everybody kind of has a little different flavor of doing things. And what I really appreciated, because I didn't know what CAS was. We've been doing virtual CFO services for 20 plus years. We just made that term up because it sounded right, you know, and then whenever it got formalized through CPA.com, it did bring some more regimented kind of solutions and kind of groupthink together, which was refreshing because we were always kind of the redheaded stepchild. Whenever we'd go to conferences and we'd say what we did, there people are like, huh, why would you do that? You know? And so it's really weird to be able to do that. But it still surprises me how many people don't know about CPA that are in this space, or and then, you know, I guess even people that are investigating this space, they still sometimes they'll find us before they find you.
Yes.
And then I'm usually introducing people to CPA.com and DCPA, and we'll get into all that stuff too. But could you just really quickly tell us how CPA.com, because it sounds just like a website, right?
It does. It really does.
That interacts with the AICPA and how that relationship works, because you know everybody knows the AICPA if you're a CPA, because that's where we go to get our association stuff. So can you talk about that relationship and
Absolutely.
how that?
So CPA.com, you know, was the brainchild of Barry Melanson and some others a little over 20 years ago. It's not uncommon for a large not-for-profit like the AICPA to spin off one or more little subsidiaries that have kind of a specific focus. And as the name implies, our focus was, you know, really thinking more about technology and how technology was going to advance the profession. You know, to harken back to something else that you just said, audit, tax, you know, these things that have been happening for 100 years, the thought leadership in those areas and the education in those areas and the definition of those areas and just the common understandings of those areas have had a century to sort of gel. So shortly after CPA.com was formed as originally as CPA to Biz was the original name. And I think that actually made even less sense. So the CPA.com moniker sort of came about at the same time that the AICPA and the then fledgling CPA.com began to really understand that there were firms out there like yours that were doing some really interesting things on a foundation of technology. You weren't able to do what you do as, you know, as CFOs for hire or outsourced, you know, accounting and advisory services without the kind of technology that really became available about 15 years ago. So I always kind of giggle when I see somebody who says, oh, we've been doing CAS for 50 years. You've been doing things that were outsourced accounting, but our now modern definition of CAS really talks about, you know, building on a foundation of cloud-based technology. And we don't have to talk about cloud-based very much anymore because that's now the standard. But 15 years ago, CPA.com came about because we were moving to this idea of technology that was living in the cloud and was putting firms, small firms, medium-sized firms, large firms, really large firms, in a place where they were going to, again, be able to do more with less because that cloud-based technology was connecting them internally and connecting them to their clients. So AICPA and CPA.com, while two separate entities, you know, we have a really close association. We work very closely with leadership at AICPA, as well as some of the AICPA sections. I'm going to keep plugging our CAS benchmark survey, which is co-sponsored by the AICPA or AICPA PCPS section, because that small firm approach, are that small firm support, we know is where so many of so many CAS practices are living. It's a great service line for small and medium-sized kinds of firms, as well as for larger firms.
Yeah, I think that what you said there is pretty interesting. Even just the evolution of CPA.com, because what I heard you say was like, and I agree with you. I mean, I would even say, 15 years ago might even be a stretch. And virtual for us was kind of more of a marketing thing, because we were still going to people's offices and doing that kind of stuff early on. I mean, we were using GoToMeeting. There wasn't cloud-based stuff, until probably right around, 2010, 2012, that started to pivot a little bit. But I think even the evolution of CPA.com, as I've seen it, and what I'm hearing now and would love to hear more about, is that initially you're talking a lot about technology. Whenever I started listening and getting more involved with CPA.com, where I found a home it was more about, and it was at that time defined as client accounting services. So it was kind of cloud-based accounting services only, which still felt, behind the times to me, but it was still just nice to be around people that were actually doing what we were doing, using the same technology. And those kind of things. Oftentimes it's referred to as like CAS 1.0 now. And then, yes, there was like a foundation of technology, but it really just felt like a home for people that were doing outsourced accounting on a cloud level. And then over a period of a couple years, we started, Jody specifically started doing a lot of speaking engagements. I would get involved a little bit, and so would some other people from our team, and really talking about like, no, we should be doing advisory. Now, whenever I go to those conferences and I hear those things and I see the resources, and I think CPA.com even formally kind of shifted from client accounting services to client advisory services, then it felt like it was like, oh, this is exactly what we're talking about. Of course, we still need to do the accounting stuff. Like that is still essential to what we do. But then adding this advisory first focus really felt like, okay, we're nailing it. That said, what I hear, and I started to see actually at the last conference, and again, we'll get into the DCPA here in a little bit, but what I heard at the last conference was I started all of a sudden seeing tax and audit stuff start to come back into the conversation. And I know, again, because trying to get to your roots of being more technology focused, so you have those tracks. But it also sounded like, I believe Dave Hartley from our team is on the advisory board now, and specifically talking about broader advisory services to start to get included, and not just VCFO accounting. Like we're one element in Anders' advisory package. We have different, we have managed IT services, all those kind of things under one umbrella. So are you seeing what is that next evolution or shift that you're starting to see at CPA.com?
So many things to unpack. So, again, just kind of to reiterate, CPA.com has really been focused on the thought leadership around the technology. And for kind of a decade, probably, as you pointed out, there was some cloud-based technology as early as 2007, 2008 that was making inroads in the accounting profession, but it really found its foothold more like 2012, to 15 along in there. So the thought leadership that goes along with all of that has been a big part of what CPA.com has tried to do, as you keep saying, formalizing, putting a definition together. The shift from, thinking about this as just outsourced accounting, where you might drive to somebody's office and do some things virtually, to now this concept of, trying to formalize it as client advisory services. When I joined CPA.com 6 years ago, one of the things that was actually initially very confusing to me was the fact that some places I saw it listed, or I saw it named digital client accounting services. Some places I saw it named client accounting and advisory services. Some places I saw it listed as client advisory and accounting services. And some places it was just client advisory services. And we sat down with the results of the first CAS benchmark survey after 2018. and realized that sort of level of confusion about what's going on here, what's included here, what services are really part of this. And so in advance of the second benchmark survey in 2020, CPA.com wrote a definition and said, look, we're going to make this simple. We're going to start calling this client advisory services because we're seeing advisory rise to the top across the profession, not just in CAS. Large firms often have an advisory umbrella and CAS fits under that. Medium-sized firms often have tax advisory and some additional audit prep kind of advisory, in addition to CAS and other kinds of outsourced advisory. The advisory is pervasive in the profession. Obviously, we saw that crazy acceleration of change that happened in 2020, 21, 22. And I think a lot of firms had an opportunity to step back and realize that their clients had changed. And their clients were no longer just looking for compliance services. They figured out what you guys had figured out 10 years earlier, 15 years earlier, and that is that clients need that level of advice. They want more than just somebody that checks the boxes for them. So our digital CPA conference that happens every December, that was very much originally supposed to be like across the profession, but very quickly moved into kind of just being a CAS conference. So probably years 2 through 7 were really focused on CAS. And as we have seen the rise of other kinds of advisory software, so the AICPA with CPA.com with some top firms have been working for a number of years now on a dynamic audit solution. That is a massive shift based on technology and the methodology for audit. We are finally seeing some solutions that are becoming available that will help more and more firms kind of make a shift to financial advisory that is bigger than just tax advisory. And all of this, again, it all comes based on the technology, but CPA.com is trying to offer the thought leadership for those areas as well. So, as you said, Dave and I actually talked about this at the DCPA advisory board meeting in February. The shift away, we're not shifting away from CAS at DCPA. We're definitely still, there is something for everyone around CAS at DCPA, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something for others as well. And I think, especially for firms who are looking at the success of their CAS practice and thinking there might be something there. We might be able to replicate some of the changes that we've made in our approach to services. We might be able to replicate that over in our tax space with some of our clients. We might want to think about, how we can do things a little differently than we've done them for the last 100 years in our A&A space. Those leaders from firms are going to find something at DCPA that's going to help them think about where they want to be in 2 years, 5 years, beyond.
That will be exciting to see. And I've gone to 2 of the DCPA conferences, including last year in Denver in 2024, and they're excellent. It really does align with the things we're doing. Adam and I do a lot of coaching of other firms who have interest in doing advisory services as CFO, and they're always looking for resources. Aside from benchmark survey and DCPA, what are some of the other things that CPA.com would offer to say, hey, you can come to us and here are some things we can do?
Well, the first thing that's really easy is that you know where our website is because it's at CPA.com.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Sorry. I figured that's why nobody could find you.
Yes.
You're at CPA.net. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Check.
And we have a lot of good resources that are available on our website. Just to kind of test drive, kick the tires, see what you think. The two that I point people to immediately on our website, first of all, it's CPA.com. And if you go /CAS, you'll get there. Otherwise, from that homepage, it's not too hard to find the right space. But there are two resources that I think are a great starting point. And the first one is actually called, internally, I refer to it as the CAS 2.0 white paper. I'll have to think about what that white paper is actually called. It's got a different name on it, but it's the big thing that's splashed on our website. It's not hard to find. And it's an ungated download. So it's a really easy download to get your hands on. And it actually talks about some of the things that we've started to talk about here. It really talks about kind of a definition around client advisory services and why client advisory services isn't just bookkeeping. And it talks a little bit about this notion. You heard me use the phrase CAS 2.0. About 2 or 3 years ago, we realized that the CAS of 2012 has really evolved in a big way. So we started talking about, what's the future of CAS? Well, what would the next version look like? What's 2.0? And so we've built out an entire framework and methodology for either evolving an existing CAS practice or even starting to build a new CAS practice. And that CAS 2.0 white paper really lays out those 4 pillars, starting with firm strategy and governance and practice development. What are the considerations that you want to start talking about? And to a certain extent, what order do you want to start talking about? I'm sure you guys hear this all the time when you're working with firms. Everybody wants to immediately talk about technology and immediately talk about pricing.
Right.
You are,
yes.
You are the royalty of pricing. We talk about your pricing approach frequently as one of sort of 2 or 3 really good ways to sit down and do pricing. But we also really talk about the fact that pricing is not where you start. You really have to start with strategy and planning. And our CAS benchmark survey, hit home on that and with some data to back it up. So the CAS benchmark survey report, and I will hold it up.
Which it is a jewel. I will give you that. Yeah.
It's very good. Yes.
Is available as a download on our website. And this is another great place for folks to start because within this, this year we set it up as 7 big insights. Each of those insights comes with about 3 actionable next steps. And if that's too much for you, we actually have a page that says where to go from here.
Good.
The last 8 pages or so are lots and lots of data and lots of statistics. I cannot get away from that math degree. I really love it. So we put those as big tables in the back. And for folks who are already offering CAS services, it's a great place to start to think about where you are and where you can stretch and go next. I am going to make a big plug for firms who are already offering CAS, because if you are participating in the CAS benchmark survey, which will happen again in just about a year, you have access to an online platform where you actually can pull a comparison report and you can filter the comparison report. So I know I mentioned earlier that CAS is a great place for small and medium-sized firms to kind of get their foot in the door with their clients. It's very sticky. And if you want to, just filter these results down, if you took and participated in the CAS benchmark survey and you just want to filter this down, I just want to see firms who are, 3 million to 10 million. And I just want to see firms that have been doing CAS for more than 2 years, because we know that something kind of magical happens at the 2 years point as well. So those are 2 of the resources that are available. When you come to our website, you then see that we also offer some bundles of workshops and self-study courses and coaching that can support firms through this growth journey. It doesn't matter where you are on that journey. If you have committed to the idea of offering CAS, we have something for you. So we have a CAS 2.0 practice introduction that is a workshop and 4 self-studies that will help you make some decisions about how to get started and how to really move forward. That's also really great for somebody who is a leader in a firm that is starting CAS, but maybe isn't maybe isn't, doing the execution. It allows them to speak the language. We do a lot of sort of vocabulary and level setting so that we know what's happening there. We have another bundle, if you want to call it a bundle, which we refer to as the CAS 2.0 Practice Essentials. And it comes with a really amazing toolkit. And that toolkit includes a roles and responsibilities matrix. It includes a pricing worksheet. It includes a vendor scorecard as you're including. Right. So the kinds of things that you as a practice leader would spend, dozens, hundreds of hours building out yourself. And along with that, there are workshops that teach you to use those resources, as well as access to self-studies, access to a firm self-assessment and an unpack session with us. So not a lot of one-on-one, a lot of sort of one-to-many group workshop kind of information. And then, of course, for firms that are ready to commit for a year, because we know that making those changes, you guys know that making those changes takes time. It's really hard to do this on your own. And so we offer a coaching program that comes with everything that I just talked about, plus some additional coaching tools that we actually spend, 2 months walking through. So there are 6 2-month topics. It all ends in a big capstone. Those cohorts of folks going through that have a lot of opportunity to really spend their time re-envisioning their practice as a CAS 2.0 practice, where they think about where they want to be, moving forward. They're able to dare I say, correct anything that was sort of built in a funny way. They're able to, expand the breadth of services while probably niching down the clients for whom they are doing that. And all the while they're getting the staffing right, they're getting the pricing right, they're getting the technology right. So those are some of the things that CPA.com is offering. And we have a lot there. And all of that is then on top of that digital CPA conference that happens every December.
What about the team members? Do you have stuff? I mean, that was a lot of practice management. I heard getting started, getting the tools, doing that kind of stuff. I think the next evolution after that, all that's super important. So common understanding of what we're talking about, terms, structure, foundation, get all that set up. And then what about people that are a little bit further in the journey and like, cool, I get it, but I need resources for my team. Does CPA.com help with any of that?
Yeah, I think I forgot that one of the things that we actually offer is what we refer to as the Introduction to CAS for staff. And it is a workshop for staff, for CAS staff members, to really, as a CAS leader, your staff are going to hear you say the same things over and over and over again. And maybe they're going to hear it and maybe they're not. And we actually built this workshop. I went to a conference a few years ago and I heard some people saying, you have a lot of things for leaders. What else can you do for my team? And I thought, we can do this for your team. We can take these same best practices and flip them and just look at them through a different lens. So we talk about those same best practices, but rather than talking about how do you make the decisions to implement these practices, we talk about how you can support the decisions that your CAS leaders are making, how those best practices tie into your daily tasks that allow you to, meet or exceed your goals for your KPIs, and really support the success of the firm and the practice that you're part of.
The resources you're talking about resonate so well with the people that Adam and I talk to when we talk to firms. It is so common that we have someone who says, I do outsource accounting and I want to do more advisory. Or I do some advisory, but it's only me, and the advisory I do is just whatever the clients want. And they recognize that's really hard to scale. And so when you talk strategy, one of the early things we talk about is figure out what your offerings are that you want them to be and start to standardize. And if you could teach us. So for example, is a dynamic forecast that you're reviewing with clients, is that an important foundational piece that you want? And financial statements and maybe non-financial metrics, some of those kind of things to say, this is what we offer. in that way, when you talk about the kind of resource you have, you got a strategy that then can say, how do I teach people? So it's not only the one person who's great in front of clients who gets and says, okay, I'm too busy, we can't grow. Or Adam is one of the people who sells. He really wants to know that when he offers things to a prospect, that's actually what's going to get delivered. It's not if he gives it to Tom, they get this flavor. And then if he gives it to Greg, they get a totally different flavor. That's a really hard thing to sell. So I
It is
love
a
that you're
hard thing
talking
to sell.
about toolkits. How do you really do that thoughtful planning as you develop those things?
Yeah, we think about this a lot. And as a matter of fact, a few years ago, we actually launched a CAS advisory council. So, we have folks on our CPA.com staff, most notably Kim Blasco, who led a large CAS practice for many years, who, we have folks who have done this. But it's really important for us to be constantly speaking with practitioners who are doing this day in and day out. So in addition to just a lot of conversations that we have to ensure that we see what's coming down the pike, we also have a CAS advisory council. Your Jody Grundon is a member of our CAS advisory council. Yep. We appreciate him and we appreciate everything that he brings from your, practices and experience.
He gets it all from Tom. It's okay.
I'm aware.
Yes. I was going to say, take as much of Jody as you want, please. Use it more. We'll give as much chance to dump on Jody as we can.
Absolutely. Another IU guy. What am I going to do here?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I hope that other people have a chance to listen to this during March Madness and understand why this is such a big deal right now.
Yes.
But you nailed it just a moment ago when you said so many practices are spending time doing things in a reactionary way. My client came to me and they wanted something, so I did it for them. This is great for your clients. You are doing right by your clients. And I always want to say that, I don't want to tell you that you're doing it wrong, because this is a great value to your clients to give them what they need. But wouldn't it be a greater value to your clients if you could be proactive about giving them that forecast and have a forecast that's really rich and that was built in advance? So all you had to do was put your clients' variables and your clients' assumptions and your clients' numbers into that forecast. And you had it built in such a way that you knew that there weren't any errors in it.
Right.
You're killing my competitive advantage. It used to always be, that was it. It was super easy. People would be like, I would go through my elevator pitch and I'd tell them what we do and everything. And they'd be like, in fairness, I never even ask my CPA firm or my accounting firm if they can do all this stuff. And I go, oh, they can do it, but this is what we do. And then the people are like, yeah, never mind. I get that. And then they would pay us 2, 3, 4x what they were paying their current accounting firm and never even have the conversation with them. So that was an easy competitive advantage. So people would always ask us, like, it seems silly that you give away all your trade secrets and are trying to promote this service to everybody. Why wouldn't you just keep that to yourself? But it's exactly what you're talking about, the visibility with the clients. What we were trying to do is influence the market and say, hey, start creating demand for our service rather than, us being like having to sell what we do and how it's different from all the other accounting firms that they've ever worked with. More and more people that do this, then clients are going to now demand this service from everybody in our profession. And the people that will be left behind will be the people that don't adapt to that don't have systems for that don't do these things. So having a resource like CPA.com, I think is critical to our service segment that we serve in doing those kind of things. If it could just shift really quickly to the DCPA, because I think also just culturally, don't get me wrong, like I've enjoyed Engage, but one of the challenges that I found with Engage is like, I'm kind of a social person, so I like to just make friends. And so a lot of times I'm finding people from nonprofit or the corporate world, and we're not like, our vernacular is not the same. Our struggles aren't the same, those kind of things. So cool people, but just not really, there's a lot of other stuff going on. Whereas what I have enjoyed and what'll be interesting to see is how you kind of maintain that kind of identity of what that practice has been as you expand out to different service lines and provide more and more opportunities for other things in the advisory space in the conference itself. Because anytime I bump into somebody at DCPA, we speak the same language, we have the same problems, we're working on the exact same thing. And so it's been a great place to network and just get to know people, understand what everybody else is doing. And that's been fantastic. So can you tell us, like, it's normally in December, right? First week or two in December. Do you know like where it's going to be this next year yet?
Absolutely. So as you said, first full week of December every year. And it does move. We try to make sure that it is not always in the same part of the country to give folks access who, if you're on the West Coast, you maybe don't want to travel to the East Coast all the time. Or, a few years ago, we had it in Seattle. It's a pretty big trip from the East Coast. But this year we'll be in the DC area. So we will be at the Gaylord Hotel in National Harbor, which means that there are several airports that are really easy to fly into. Our website, again, is cpa.com. It's very easy to just, go there and navigate immediately to the Digital CPA Conference, or DCPA Conference. D stands for digital. Still another reference to that thought leadership that is built on the technology of the cloud. And I think that you make this really great point. It is not Engage Part 2. Engage has long been sort of firm leaders, and then a lot of staff actually go to DCPA. I think, go to Engage. I think that DCPA kind of hits the sweet spot in between. So if you are kind of a medium-sized firm, a slightly smaller firm, your firm leaders and your service line leaders are going to find a home at DCPA. If you are a larger firm, this is a really great place to send your thought leaders, your service line leaders, and really your up and coming service line leaders, that next generation. As you were talking about the way that clients are looking at these services, new generations of clients are looking for different things. And I think that DCPA has been a great place for the next generation of leaders to think about how the shifts in the accounting profession are going to impact their firms. I see a book by an often, a frequent DCPA speaker right behind your head, Adam, which is the Time's Up Ron Baker book.
Yeah.
So Ron Baker is one of several speakers that we've had at DCPA to talk about pricing. Because this is a big shift. It was a big finding in our CAS benchmark survey this year that CAS is not primarily pricing based on time and materials. That may be happening under the covers, but it's not what's being presented to clients. And I think for firms who have been very rigid in their thinking around utilization and realization and time and materials as the foundation for everything, including just generalized success, DCPA is a great place to go to sort of upend those thoughts and really start thinking about, how they can look at success differently in that 2.0 kind of moving forward world, even if that's now tax, moving forward, or a different methodology to support the way they think about audit moving forward.
I think, Tom, I'll beat you to the punch. You're going to ask me what my closing thoughts are. I would just say the one thing that I think is really cool about the DCPA and CPA.com is whether you're a solopreneur or you're in the top 100, it's super relatable in both those. And that's a really hard connection to make, dealing with big business versus super small solopreneurs, and like having them speak the same language and still have the same problems and still work on the same technology. That is a strange but very cool and unique thing about our industry. So I do think that I would encourage anybody that is a solopreneur thinking about getting into this space, go to CPA.com. That's where you're going to get your education. That's where you're going to get your learn. And then the larger places, like bringing their leadership team and stuff like that. It's just a really cool mix of people. And I think you can learn from both. It's not one of those things where you feel like, oh, well, these people don't get me or they have bigger problems. Nope. We're literally all battling the same things. So it's very cool, and appreciate everything that you and CPA.com have done for the community, and appreciate you coming on here and giving some bigger visibility into, what that does.
Well, likewise, I appreciate all that you have done for CPA.com. Both of you, several other people from your firm that I have worked really closely with. I appreciate that, particularly in the CAS space, folks tend to be very, very collaborative. And I think that this is something that you are mentoring and leading, that collaborative approach. And we appreciate that you send folks to CPA.com on the regular.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that people take advantage of these. You mentioned Kim Blasco. I'm actually taking a class that she's teaching next week. Cracking the CAS growth code is one that I'm signed up for and looking forward to that. But I think we often look for resources, and having this much of someone's doing advisory in one place is really nice. And I have a feeling many people, if they don't know about this, think of the AICPA and the breadth of all their things and say, I'm not sure I'll find what I need, but knowing that it's niche and focus here is really helpful.
Yeah, we try to be really focused on, one of the things I'm thinking a lot about right now is ensuring that our free resources and our paid resources and our conferences and the workshops and webinars that we do with our partners really have a very consistent message, that curriculum is well aligned. Because we want to ensure that folks always feel like they're getting something from us. And by, sort of spiraling that learning, this is what I do, we can make sure that the quality of what we're doing continues to be really, really high and really valuable to CPAs.
That's great. Well, thank you for spending the time today, giving people a little bit more information so they know where to go, what they can find, things to do. And I really would encourage people to take advantage of those. Amy, thanks very much.
CPA.com.
Thank you.